have a really fun, wonderful guest. Lindsay Johnson is the CEO of Wordbank, or should we say managing director? What's the proper title, Lindsay?
I'm the CEO. Yeah,
CEO.
I am the CEO. I guess the managing director piece is it's a British reference. It means you're the person who's managing all the things, which obviously I'm trying not to be doing. So yeah, CEO is the official title.
I love it. So just a couple housekeeping notes. One of our friends here at Proven Chaos, Amanda Holmes, her book launch is later on today. And so it's been super fun to see her make her way through rewriting her dad's cult classic, The Ultimate Sales Machine. And I think, fingers crossed, she's going to do one of the impossibles, which is to get a rewrite to hit the bestsellers list again. And so super proud of the work that she has done and supporting her. She's been a great friend of the show and a friend of our community. So if you haven't bought that book, Lindsay and I were just talking about the purpose of business and thinking about what it is that we do, why we do it, how people should be at the center of everything that we do. And the chapter 13 that she wrote, honoring her dad, not only to run your business well and double sales, but also how you go about living a rich and full life. And so that is really going to be the topic that we're going to talk to Lindsay about. So Lindsay, walk me through. Wordbank is a company that says it specializes in marketing localization. I've never heard of such a thing. What is marketing localization?
Marketing localization is the adaptation of marketing and creative content for international audiences to help companies drive global growth. So it involves the combination of language and creative media and digital marketing services with a whole bunch of strategy based on what target markets companies are trying to achieve growth in.
Is that just a fancy way of saying you're a translation company?
Well, we certainly are in the translation and localization industry, but no, we wouldn't describe ourselves as a translation company because really what we do is help marketers to achieve what they're trying to do from a marketing objective. So it's a more strategic. We describe it as the strategic blend of localization and marketing and localization best practices to drive customer success. Whereas the translation industry is generally focused on delivering in-language content, lots and lots of in-language content extremely efficiently.
I think it's interesting to watch that differentiation because when you look at it, it's hard to compete in translation when you are a people-first company. And I know Wordbank is a people-first company because when you are commoditized, you're really looking for the lowest cost widget that you can put into the system and still turn a buck on, which means in my experience, you're exploiting people. And so how do you go about keeping a people-first mindset and culture when the industry or parts of your industry are headed in one direction and you're very clearly headed in a different direction as a people-first company?
Well, it's difficult because, as you said, our industry over the years has become very, very tech focused, very tech driven, and language has become commoditized. So the elements that have been dependent on human talent have been devalued in the marketplace. So coming out as a people first organization, it really is about advocating for the value of human talent. And we've always specialized in marketing communications. So we started off as a translation agency delivering marketing content, but we've evolved over the years to become much more strategic about the way that we do things. And really, when you talk to clients about the importance of human talent in producing really authentic marketing messaging and a creative experience, a user experience that's authentic at the local level, it's not a big reach. People understand that you need human talent for that. So really that's the approach that we've taken. It's about advocating for the importance of it and helping our clients to understand what they're buying and to focus on what they're actually trying to achieve from a business perspective as an end goal.
I think there's so many people that say they're a people first company And then when it really comes down to it, it's this mindset. Are your people an asset or are they a liability in everything that you're doing? And so do you write those checks and go like, yes, I have the best people. That's the greatest asset that I can have inside of a business. Because I've said this almost probably every podcast I've ever done. I've never met anyone who shows up and says, you know what, I really want to suck at work today. And yet there's plenty of people that are ineffective, and it's poor leadership. And I would find that most of those people are looking at their people as a cost center that's a liability on their P&L, as opposed to really their greatest asset. And so how do you balance that? How do you fight in an industry that has moved into an area of being commoditized, whereas you're going in a different direction? How do you balance how you pay your people, how you reward your people when other ones are going to lowest cost denominator?
How do we balance it? I think, I mean, that's a tough question. I think we made a very firm commitment to the fact that in delivering a service, which we do, which is not easy, it's complicated. When you're marketing to humans, there's a lot of that goes into that. Our entire ability to be effective, to do what we do best, comes from our people. We're only as strong as our people. We've got all the systems in the industry that help us to do what we do. Obviously, we're a heavily process-driven company, but fundamentally at the heart of everything we do is our people. So once you make that commitment and then stick to your guns on that, it kind of guides the entire direction of the company. It guides the way that we talk about what we do, the way that we engage with our clients, the way that we engage with our staff. And so in terms of how we balance it in an industry that doesn't do that, I don't know that we ever really, we haven't spent a lot of time worrying about what the industry is doing. We spend time thinking about what we're all about, what makes us special, how we do what we do. And changing the status quo in our industry, not for the sake of challenging it, but because we know that our clients get better results with our approach. So, and that is because of the partnership that they have with us, and it's our people that deliver that experience to them.
Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. It's interesting. I tell this story. I was chasing Brooklyn. We were having a running race in the parking lot, and she kept on looking at me. And I said, Brooklyn, look straight ahead, keep looking straight ahead. And she kept on looking at me and kept on looking at me. And after about the 10th time, I made a dad decision, that I was going to let her bust on the curb, low stakes. And she was all, bent out of shape, that I would let her, bust her knee on the curb. I said, sweetheart, you never win races looking left and looking right. You win races knowing who you are as a company, the unique value that you have, the problem that you solve in the marketplace, and then you go deliver that. And I think that's really smart in a place where, you guys are in a space that's competitive, yet you can solve problems differently for people when you take a strategic point of view and a global point of view for your clients. I think it's a super smart approach. Walk me through, Lindsay, you guys made a decision a number of years ago to become certified as a certified B Corp. Why was that important to you?
Well, we had been through, so we made the decision to go after the B Corp certification. I want to say it was around 2015, so it was quite a long time ago. We were at a point in our development where, our industry is a very highly competitive industry. It's dominated by, it's very fragmented. There's a lot of big companies at the top. There's lots of very small companies at the bottom. There's been, decades of acquisition and all sorts of things going on that can make it quite hard to compete. We have now been in the business for 30 plus years, and we were at a point where we were having some struggles, about how to proceed with all of it. And I spent a lot of time thinking very hard about company strategy and the direction we wanted to take. And it bothered me that in the industry, everything boiled down to the lowest common denominator, that it was all about price, and that the competition for business had become all about price. And the people in our industry, we don't have a great reputation for looking after people. Resources internationally, they don't get paid very well, sometimes not at all, by companies like us. And a colleague of mine told me about the B Corp movement and about triple bottom line standards of doing business.
Give some context on that. What is the triple bottom line? I'm familiar with it, but I don't know that everyone else will be.
Well, I mean, every business leader understands that, the bottom line is ultimately about profit. From a pure accounting perspective, that's the way we think about it. And the whole point of being in business, ultimately, if you're being successful in business, it's to deliver a profit. Triple bottom line is about balancing that goal, that very important business objective, with people and how you treat your people and the planet. So people, planet, profit. It's about leveling off what's important as a business outcome. And that's not specifically the way the B Corp movement describes their objective, but we had already made a commitment to triple bottom line standards of doing business, where we want to report on metrics around those things. And as a service business, it's really all about people and profit. Obviously, we have some environmental impact metrics that we report on. And then the B Corp movement's about business as a force for good. And if you already are thinking in a triple bottom line way, and you already have a people first mentality and a strong culture, it's kind of a no-brainer. It certainly was for me. Well, yes, I want to know more about this movement. I want to be part of it.
Love it. Last week we had Jay Wilkinson on, and he is a B Corp as well, and talked really in inspiring terms about how that has, made him think about his impact as a leader, as an organization. And he's part of the Do More Good movement, which is bringing together conscious capitalism and B Corps. And it was really interesting to hear him speak about how that has impacted him as a leader. Tell me about, for you, and it sounds like maybe you were already running your business in a B mindset to start with, but has it changed or impacted the way in which you have a responsibility to do the reporting, to be forthright, to be transparent as a leader in the organization?
I don't know if it's changed anything. It definitely has enhanced that commitment. I've always been of a mindset personally. I've not been driven by how much money I could make. I've been driven by the difference that I could make. And so it was really all about doing something meaningful and doing the best by the people around me. The joining the B Corp movement and going through the whole certification process and being required to think about it in very structured terms has helped us to do more of those things, to get better. And for us, it's really all about, the way that we treat our people. And so, we were talking about this the other day, as we've gotten successful and we've experienced growth and all of those things, it can be really hard to lose your way, I think, and I am of an opinion that it is possible to deliver success, to achieve personal success and success in life without screwing other people over. And I think that so much of what can drive a business becomes all about the money. And I think if you commit to this way of thinking, it helps you to always be staying on track, to always be considering how you can be doing better. And so we often say to our people, we're not perfect. We are not perfect. We, like everyone in life, we are evolving. We're trying to do better, we're learning all the time. But this provides a framework within which we can hold ourselves accountable to the things, to the values that we've committed to around this.
I think that's so good, because when I think about businesses that I've run, using frameworks allow you to create repeatable, scalable, and predictable results. And you can point to hey, we're missing the mark here. We're doing a great job over here. If we can do this better, we can accelerate the business forward. And I love that you have that framework to help guide you and guide your decisions. When you think about your people and the investments in your people, what does that look like for you? How do you work your way through rewarding your people for the contributions that they're making into the business?
Oh, I mean, in lots of different ways, we've beefed up a lot of very tangible programs, right? So, I mean, first of all, it all starts with hiring. So before we get to reward, the best thing that we can do for our people is to give them great people to work with. So, culture is absolutely critical to us as a business. And, I believe in, Seth Godin's idea that people define your culture defines your brand. And so we do our level best to always screen everyone that comes into the company for an alignment with our values. And it's difficult. It's difficult to get that right and to be consistent, particularly as we've grown. But that is the first step, is making sure that we're hiring in a way and then onboarding people in a way that is consistent with the things that we tell them that they're becoming a part of, and then when they're within the organization, obviously we have all the things that you would normally have in a company around, regular feedback cycles and, ways to have development and progression paths for people and for them to feel like they have a voice in the organization. With the B Corp side of things, we beefed up things around. So we allow our staff to have volunteer time off to basically choose causes that they want to be part of and to do work with those causes on company time, try to do things together as an organization. As a company, we support our staff in the things that matter to them from a social side of things. So we have a JEDI, we call it's Justice, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, JEDI. And we do have conversations in the company about things that quite often, or traditionally wouldn't come into a business environment.
Like what are those things? What are you guys having conversations about?
Oh, I mean, everything really around diversity and inclusion, people's experience of being from different backgrounds, from being minorities, fears and worries that they have about that. We, support pride in lots of different ways. And we talk about social justice things internally as well, and really blend the things that really matter to our people. We support time to vote, for example, and we help our people to register to vote and to understand, because that can become complicated, particularly for young people, and then give them the time to go off and do that and just support them in having a voice. And, we do take a stand publicly on some things that matter, to our people. So we've talked about bodily autonomy type stuff and, some of the things, the trends that have happened over the course of the last couple of years, socio-political things that have come up that affect people's lives and their mental health and just how they're feeling about everything. And we recognize that, that affects who they are as whole people. And therefore you can't, in my view, separate that from what goes on in a business, because
Amen.
they bring their whole selves to work.
You cannot separate personal and professional. I say that, and that my first value is love your people and treat them as whole people. I don't know how to split people in half and say, oh, well, just bring your professional self to work and leave
never mind the rest of it.
Never mind the rest of it. That's
doesn't work.
That's of no use to us. My mind's racing a little bit because you've hit a couple nerves for me, and I'm thinking about Matt Foxhall, who transformed an organization by being really intentional about his hiring process. And he talked to us about that. I think he's episode 12. And just, you're right. When you invite the right people on the mission with you, gosh, it just gets so much more exciting and so much more fun. And you can get way more done because you actually like the people you're working with. It's like, oh God, I get to work with Summerlin. This is awesome. So cool. And, the second piece of that, Megan Bowen, who's the COO of Refine Labs, they built a 100-person company in 3 years, like overnight, because they're doing business right. But she talked about psychological safety. And I think that's she gave me that term. I just ruminated on that for at least a week. I thought it was brilliant. And obviously, if you're willing to take stands on issues you must cultivate psychological safety inside your organization and allowing people to show up as their authentic self.
Yes,
How are
absolutely.
how are you doing that? What's happening uniquely inside your business?
I don't know if it is that unique anymore. I'm not sure how unique it is, but I hadn't heard that term.
Well, hold on. I will stop you. It is unique. And I will tell you, it's unfortunate that it is unique because, I think there's other ways in which to run your business. And, I could run on tangents for forever on this one, but how do you do it inside of Wordbank? What is it that you're doing that allows people to feel that safety?
I mean, for us, we don't have the term psychological safety. I hadn't heard of that term until I heard you speaking about it on this show. But we have been talking in terms of, and actually Michelle, who's my chief of staff and is sitting here right now, she's been absolutely instrumental in our thinking around these things. She understood what it was that mattered to me, and she helped to translate, pardon the pun, those things into really tangible things that would form part of our culture. And so we and I believe it was Michelle that brought this up to me, have been describing it as bringing your whole self to work. And we've been talking about that for years. And I think that's the equivalent of psychological safety. Well, how do we do it? I mean, by being real. When I was in the early stages of trying to grow the business in Denver and starting something from scratch and having to figure out ways to deal with all the challenges and bring people along, and I really had a tangible moment where I went home to my husband and I was like, I just feel like I have to be entirely myself at work. I can't do this by trying to be what I think it is to be the leader of this company, like what this professional persona is supposed to be. I can only do this by being truly myself. And I was in a different culture and in a whole different environment, and I think I was a little bit hesitant to bring my whole self into the office. I'm not a traditional business dresser. I, swear like a sailor at times. I believe in laughing and enjoying the character of the people around.
That's heresy.
Yes, I know.
We laugh, we joke, we have fun at work. This is terrible.
And I believe that it's important to enjoy the people that you work with, because you give up everything that matters the most to you to come to work every day. All the people that you love the most, you leave them at home in order to come to work every day. So you really better enjoy. If we've got the luxury in our world, we definitely do have that luxury of being able to choose a work path that is fulfilling by the people that we're around every day and getting enjoyment out of what we're trying to do together every day. And so that was the real moment for me, where I was like, no, I really have to just stop holding back the parts of myself that I was worried, might not go down as someone's impression of what's professional. And in doing that, I took the leap, and we're going back years now. It's probably about 10, 12 years ago. And of course, the outcome was that the people in the company were they loved it. They loved the fact that there was no dress code, and they loved that they could swear in meetings and no one would, frown at them. And they loved that they could bring subjects up at work and it just helped with connection, I suppose. And it's not, to me, I don't think that's a revelation anymore. It's just at the time, it seemed quite unusual. I think now more companies are functioning that way, where you're not two people, you're just one person, and you bring it all to work. You should. And if you do, great things can happen.
I think you're right. I ran a company once, and we had a very casual dress code, and I did have to narrow the lanes just a little bit when I had a few people showing up in their pajamas.
Yeah,
and I just thought, listen, we can have casual workplace environments, but when we're showing up in our flannel jammies, maybe we got to just give that a little bit of narrow.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, anything can be taken to its extreme, and then you're like, oh no. I mean, the way that we just describe it at Wordbank is we talk about the fact that we don't take ourselves too seriously, but we take what we do very seriously. And that's how we try to help balance what we mean by professionalism. So by not taking ourselves too seriously, we're not walking around trying to prove how big we are with big titles and sort of power grabs and all of those kind of things that can happen in some organization. And we are bringing our whole selves to work, but we're doing it in a way that aligns with the people around us. So we're not making people feel uncomfortable about who we are. I think coming to work in your pajamas is probably taking it a bit far. Although I think we've had a pajama day. Have we had a pajama day, Miller? I think we have. Yeah.
It's okay if it's called for. When it was unexpected, it was like, well, maybe I need to rethink this policy. I think it's a good one. Walk me through, Lindsay. I mean, I think you've been at the forefront of this. What was the story that you had to tell yourself when you said, I'm going to show up as my full self? And you know what? I'm going to cuss. And if people don't like that, sorry, Charlie. I'm going to show up in non-traditional business attire. It'll be fine, but I'm not going to put on a sport jacket and my pencil skirt. What does that look like? Because I think for some people, we tell ourselves a story about judgment and how people are going to see that. How did you get to the other side of that? Other than you just don't give a shit.
Oh no, I mean, because of course you do, but no, I think it was the realization as you're trying to grow something and deal with all the challenges. Like I said, it's not easy to grow a business. People aren't loyal to companies; they're loyal to people, And so I think a lot of businesses, or certainly at the time for us, I think there was a misunderstanding at the management level that very simple fact is the case. And so with that being the case, if you believe that really what drives your individual passion and your sense of fulfillment in what you're doing is about who you do it with, not necessarily what you're doing, but who you do it with, then the story is very easy. It's like, well, this is who I am. And I believe in what I'm trying to achieve in the company. I'm passionate about this business. I'm authentic in what I say about the value of people, about the importance of being your whole self. And so I must be those things, and I'm not going to be for everyone. That is a fact. Not everyone's going to like it, but this is going to be the only way that I can really make that transition from where we are to where we need to get next. And at the time I was reading a lot of stuff and inspired by various people. And one of the things that sticks in my mind, I mean, I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, and I saw his TED talk, people buy it became a book, people buy the why, but, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I really, really subscribe to that. So I told myself the story that if I was really going to make the business succeed, I would need to shed any concern I had for whether or not trying to be all things to all people, and just get straight about what I was trying to achieve and leave it up to people to decide whether or not they wanted to do it with me. That was the turning point, really.
It's still a moment where you have to take a deep breath. Like,
yeah.
I'm a big believer that, the more connected you are to your why and, your vision and your values, the easier it is to be gritty and resilient and all of those things, because you're on a mission. It's like doing this, putting this up on the board that you're going to go positively impact 5 million people. That scares the hell out of me. But, hey, I'm going to make that declaration and I'm going to go for it.
You're on a mission to do it. You're doing it.
It makes me do scary things, right? But that is cool. And so getting to that place of being so resolute in here's who we are going to be as a company, because this is one of the things that I find in businesses, they become soulless over time, right? The values just become things that are plastered on the wall because we know that Lindsay actually does something different. That's not what happens. And so, being able to be your authentic self and show up that way, I think is a great leadership quality, especially in today's day and age. I think, you look at COVID, we always knew that 75% of people generally did not like the work that they were doing. Survey after survey after survey told us that. And then we stopped the world. We sent everyone to their loved ones at home and said, don't really talk to many people, don't go outside. And it's like, got a lot of white space to think about this whole thing. And then we had the Great Resignation.
Mm.
And, I found one statistic that 30% of people, total people, their priorities had completely changed post-COVID. I was like, wow, that is crazy. And this whole notion of being transactional, I'm going to trade my time and effort for money, was no longer good enough. It is this idea of transformation, that we can get better together, which means I better have alignment with the people and the work that I'm doing. And one of the statistics that really struck me was from the Edelman Trust Report. It was something like 61% of people are now choosing their employer based around stances about how they're impacting the environment, how they're pursuing, DEI, all of these social driven causes. And so are you seeing that? I mean, I feel like you're at the forefront of that, but are you seeing that coming through even more in force?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we've talked about this before. I think COVID accelerated a lot of things that were already going to happen. It seemed very clear that when COVID hit the world, that it was going to be a one-way trip to somewhere different in every possible way. And so I think it was already happening that people care more about who they work with and who they buy from. And that is just creeping more and more into everything that goes through people's minds. And that's a big part of the B Corp movement as well. It's like voting with your wallet, in terms of every buying choice that you make is an endorsement of a company or not, depending on those decisions. People are becoming much more conscious about those things. And I think that was already happening. We were already seeing people wanting to engage around our B Corp positioning. And at the time we were an aspiring B Corp when COVID hit, and we had been aspiring for 5 years at that point. But then COVID hit, and I think we were very fortunate that we grew through COVID and beyond. So but one of the things that we have noted, I think, generally in our hiring cycles is that we get far more applicants than we once did. We have shorter hiring cycles than we once did. Most of the people that we are talking to in interviews are aware of the fact that we are a B Corp. So it's definitely, I think this, what I called a post-COVID reckoning. I felt that it was inevitable that when everything, opened up again, people would, of course, think, well, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I don't want to do this. I want to do something else. Life is too short. And if you have the choice, why would you choose to do something that isn't fulfilling? So I don't think people stay at Wordbank because we're a B Corp, but I do think that because we operate with that people first mentality, we've attracted people who want to be part of what we're doing here. And we've noticed that more and more people are aware of or wanting a sense of purpose that goes beyond just what they do in their job every day and whether or not the company is profitable.
Well, I get to see a lot of businesses, and I'll beat the drum. I think what you guys are doing is extraordinary. And I know you're a marketing company. I would encourage you to market the shit out of what it is that you're doing, because it is unique. It is different. And the opportunity to attract the highest caliber people who are aligned, as you said, we're not for everyone. Just like I say, I'm not for everyone. I don't want everyone in my tribe, because I don't want the greedy assholes. You can stay on that side of the room. I'm A-okay. And so I think the work that you guys are doing is super fun, and it is a differentiator. I know sometimes when you're so close to it and you're living it, you don't necessarily see it, but I do get to see a broad array of companies. And geez, in the span of about 60 or 75 days when COVID happened, I spoke to over 100 companies who were scared shitless trying to figure it out. because they didn't have strong cultures. They didn't have any connection to the work that they were doing. And then they woke up and they're like, holy shit, what do we do now? How do we keep track of our people? We used to just keep them right under our thumb by making them show up to work and keeping them at their desk. And that's a different world that we're living in. And so, one thing that I'm always super curious about is how people are handling, this transition, remote work to hybrid work to in-office work. What's that look like for Wordbank? Any glimmers that you can help us share?
Well, I mean, it's been a process. It continues to be a process. I think you're right about the strength of culture in a company had so much to do with how well companies managed their way through what was going on with COVID. When I was aware that other business leaders were forcing their people back to the office because they couldn't trust what they were doing, I was acutely aware that we weren't in that position, that we didn't skip a beat. We went fully remote on the 12th of March, 2020, and we didn't skip a beat. Our service continued. Our clients were happy, our people did their work, we were connected and engaged. But one thing that I think over time has put pressure on the situation, when the world opened up again, we didn't force our people back. I've been very open about the fact that I have no intention of forcing people to do what they don't want to do. Most of our people prefer the flexibility of being able to work from home. And I don't see that there's a business benefit in forcing people to function in a way that they don't want to. But at the same time, it does put massive pressures on the management of the company, on leadership. It puts pressure on culture, or communication, on training. And in our case, because we grew as well, we're in a situation where about 64% of our people in the US office joined us since COVID happened. So many of them don't know what Wordbank was like before that. They don't have a point of reference. So it's been a bumpy process to stay connected and to stay aligned as we grow in a remote situation. We've recently just asked our people to make a commitment to being in the office 3 to 5 times a month. If they live within 30 miles of Denver, then we want them in 3 to 5 times a month. And that's our method of trying to reset that operating model is remote hybrid, and putting some emphasis on the best of both things, flexibility and connection. And it's the connection piece that suffers, I think. If you're not spending time together and you don't bump into people in the kitchen or in the hallway, and you don't overhear what people are saying, it does put pressure on the business.
I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to find their way through this path. What's the autonomy and the ability to work remotely while also creating that connection? And so finding those anchor days, or I've seen some companies that bring the whole company together quarterly for a couple day offsite retreat, because, Brene Brown says it's hard to hate up close. And,
well, that's exactly it. Yeah. I mean,
it's easy. It's easy to hide behind the email or the Teams message or whatever it might be, but you see them in the hall. It's like, oh shit, maybe I won't send that message to Sylvia.
Yeah, or if you have a disagreement about something, it's much easier to work through those points face to face than behind chat or email or what have you. I would say, on a positive note, I've always viewed every business challenge that happens, and there's been many, between economic crashes and recessions and pandemics and God knows what, over the years. This situation also shines a light on where the holes are in the culture, because it's like, well, does everyone feel aligned with the vision and the values? Is the communication as strong as it needs to be? Of course, we can solve some of those problems with asking people to come back into the office, but that's not all of the problem, and the world has changed. And I think we are prepared to operate differently because things have changed and evolved. But the challenges around this help us to understand where we need to be doing better with training and communication and more intentional with our cultural strategy and those things. So we're going through some pain around it right now. But pain is good if you can turn it into positive outcomes. So that's what we're trying to do right now.
That's right. My coach who I had on, Timmy Gallagher, he says challenges and obstacles are gifts and opportunities. And so it's just your perspective of how you want to approach this. And so, mindset is so critical to high performers. Our ability to get ourselves back to center and stay there.
Absolutely.
It is everything. I'll be interested to check in with you on hybrid, remote, and how all of that happens. It's just a personal one for me because I think, human connection is super critical. But, for nearly 20 years, I've outsourced all over the world. And I've had people that have worked with me. I think the longest one worked with me for 6 years. And he was the first person that I had outsourced to. And I just came back across him maybe in the last 6 months. And he's like, Mr. Jerry, do you remember me? I was like, Zuffa, we worked together for 6 years. Like, what do you mean? Do I remember you? Now he's married and he has 2 kids. It's an amazing story. But those points of connection, I've never been in his physical presence, but boy, did we spend a lot of time together. And so you can build the relationships. I would just say it is a little bit harder and it needs to be more intentional as you do that. So I'm interested in how companies are going to continue to try and bridge that gap over time. So it'll be a fun
No, it's
one.
interesting because it just makes me think, actually, as it often does when you and I are talking. But we've got 110 staff in our London and Denver offices, but we have 4,000 resources across the globe that we work with. And, our operating model is based on an in-country remote model. I mean, it's how we do what we do authentically. You can't deliver an international experience without people on the ground. And so we've operated that way for 30 years. And so it does make you realize that it's just about being more intentional, I think, about and the things that you take for granted that are part of your living, operating culture in an office. We just need to adjust the way that we do things and apply the same principles as we have to the wider operation in our business.
How have you done that? I always find, nuances like this because you sometimes introduce the idea of outsourcing things or using, people in other countries. My assistant is from the Philippines. She's on this call. She's amazing. I love her so much. She's not feeling great today, which is why she's not on camera. But, you can outsource things with high trust, high accountability. I mean, Maria has access to basically my underwear size. I mean, everything that you could possibly think of, she has access to. And so, as you walk your way through that, how are you creating those connections? Because I think that's the thing that scares the heck out of people, that, well, I don't know these people. How can I trust them with my password? I mean, just on and on and on. So how has Wordbank done that? Because you've done it for so long.
Well, I think that brings us back almost full circle to how we started, about being a people-first organization in an industry that tends to treat people like expendable commodities. And so we can always do better. I'm certainly not sitting here saying, oh, we are the word on connection, international connection. But we've always viewed our in-country resources as the backbone of our business. We've always viewed them as really important, valuable members of our team, and we treat them that way. And I think it doesn't really matter where people are if you make the effort to drive that connection, to ensure that people feel aligned with what we're trying to achieve together, that they feel valued. And so for us, it's been about having engagement programs with our resources. Again, Michelle, when she's in her previous role, devised an entire strategy around how to engage our international resources as members of our team, to call them out and value, reward them for the great work that they do, and to appreciate them and communicate with them. We're advocates for fair pay. We're advocates for the value of human talent. And that enables us to help the people that we're reliant on to have a better working experience, and that drives engagement as well. So, those are some of the ways that we've done it traditionally with our operating model in country. And then internally, as I said, with earlier things that we've tried to build a culture internally where people feel at home here, and that they can blend their work and their life. And we've always done that, but COVID accelerated that, and I think the idea of balance is a little bit outdated. It's really all a blend in some form or another.
Integration. Lindsay, this has been super fun. If anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat. If you want, we'll just bring you on, or I can ask the question. Summerlin gave some really good feedback. So Summerlin works at Seal Shield, and they have been a best places to work, a perennial winner of that. Brad was an early guest on the show and a great friend. So we recently did some research on what's been working best in a hybrid schedule. We found that having everyone in on the same day boosts morale. We've just implemented it, and it's working great, and everyone's loving it, right? And so Summerlin, to your point, I read an article where a large company out in California, I think there were 3,000 or 4,000 people, they were allowing people to come in as they wanted, and only 30 or 40 people were coming in at any point in time. So no one saw anyone. They still were sitting in their cubicle on a Zoom call as opposed to at home on a Zoom call. And so if you don't have some type of glue that allows people to have those connection points, then it can work backwards. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Lindsay, you've talked about being in growth mode. So you guys have grown revenues fairly rapidly over a short period of time. What types of challenges have you experienced due to that growth? And I don't know if it's in addition to being a remote work environment. I mean, you have 100 people in 2 offices, thousands of people around the globe that are working with you. But what are those challenges that you found where you're just like, God, this was so much easier 5 years ago when we were a little bit smaller?
Well, I think it's around those 3 pillars that I mentioned earlier, culture, communication, and training. We have, it's been exacerbated by having to work in a fully remote way. We've hired a lot of people into the company. We've had to embed, just through the process of growth, refined structure and build out leadership at different layers in the company, and make sure that we're training and onboarding in a way that aligns with what we're trying to achieve. Make sure that everyone's aligned with the vision and the values and our company objectives. And I think those things are all things that they've been a struggle. They've been a struggle with they've been compounded by the fact that we're trying to do it in a fully remote way, or have been. And growth is messy. I think growth is messy at the best of times. And so, we've had a fair few challenges. We had to hire very quickly last year, whereas we've done it multiple times now, where we've needed to bring on more people to meet our needs, and perhaps we hired a bit faster than we would typically have done that, and that can be a false it's not economy, a false, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It seems like a good idea at the time, and then you realize, well, perhaps the speed with which we moved looked good on the face of things, but it actually did, cause some pressures in that we didn't get it right 100% of the time, and
I tell the story. I hired 5 people in 3 days one time, and
how did that go?
Not very well.
Right.
Not very well. We literally got $500,000 in POs in one afternoon, and I went, holy shit.
Yeah.
And 4 of the 5 people were gone within 90 days, but we hired out of pain and not out of process. And that was something that I learned. I immediately put a hiring process in, and we became disciplined to that. And I'm a big believer in it because again, repeatable, scalable, predictable results. You create the framework, you run the play, and you get the right people, which makes it easier to run your business. Because as I always say, the sixes and sevens, they're the ones that suck the life out of you in your business. It's the tens that drive everything forward and make it way more fun. And so I'd rather live, if I had to do it over, I'd rather live in pain for a longer period of time than hire the sixes and sevens where you're like, whoa, I don't even want to say hello to them in the hallway. Why did I hire that person? And almost always when you look back, just like friends of mine who have gotten divorced, they said, before I went to the altar, I knew I was marrying the wrong person. I have done the same thing, not in marriage, but in hiring some people where I was like, well, this seems like a good idea. Well, come on board.
Yeah, and
No,
I mean, we've always been careful about our process, but I think when you're moving quickly, and the devil is in the hiring process, isn't it? I mean, it's very, very hard. People come across a certain way in an interview, and you do your best to explain what the reality is in our day to day, and until people get going, it's not always clear really how it plays out in reality. And then not just that though, I mean, from a leadership perspective, communication is always, I think, one of the biggest challenges. Whenever there's been any problems in a company, no matter what the circumstances, communication is quite often at the heart of the problem, and that has been a difficult one to be communicating regularly enough, intentionally enough, and making sure that everyone feels connected to what it is that we're doing. And I think we can do a better job of that as well, for sure.
I think it's every growing company is communication, because you get to a point where I think it's, you get to 50 people, there's 1,250 communication lanes that open up all the way across the organization. You're thinking like, yeah, but it's just one more person. No, it's like another 150 communication lanes that open up in doing it.
Yeah.
And so that is always a struggle for sure, is communication.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I think it's one of the things that keeps me up at night, because I know that so much of what got us here was the fact that people rallied around what we were trying to achieve as a business, and there's real love and connection in the room with those people. As we've expanded, and people who know me warts and all, they understand that I can go off at a tangent, or I can throw 20 ideas on the table, and they understand how to pass through that. They understand when I get impatient, or if I flub the way that I'm trying to say something. They get those things. And of course, how do you maintain that connection with people that you're not seeing every day, let alone having anything to do with them on the day to day? And it's really, really hard. I don't really have the answer to that. It continues to be a work in progress, but I know that it's on me. It comes down to me.
I think every great leader always looks in the mirror and says, you know what, where did I miss the mark? How did I not communicate as well, not make it as clear as possible? Wonderful. Lindsay, I have one last question for you, because we were choosing between two titles for your podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And I voted for the first one. So I want to know, how can you be successful in life and at making money without becoming an asshole?
Well, this I think goes to I've long held the view that we as human beings, we struggle with too much money and too much power. I think the evidence is out there in history and in daily life. When we get too much money and too much power, it really challenges what we're all about. And it can become very much a case, everything's very self-serving. It can become about you. And even people with the best intentions And I think this is obvious if you think about any kind of leader out in our world. Even people with the best of intentions can get sucked into a vortex of being self-absorbed and thinking about their own ends over the next person. And so I think, for personally speaking, and I said that to you, you know, as the business took off, and I did go home to my husband one night, and I was like, "Carl, this is happening and that's happening," and you know, we had 200% growth, and we have all these wonderful things happening in the business, which was just wonderful to see. And I literally was like, "Oh no, what if I become an asshole? What if I turn into an asshole because all of these things are coming about, you know?" And I lose my way and think that it's all about me. And I think knowing that can happen is really important, keeping that in mind. And also the belief that leadership is never about you. It's never ever about you. And I think that a lot of people in leadership positions don't understand that. And so I think not being an asshole is really about keeping that in mind.
I'll just let the mic drop from there. I think you're 100% right. It's one of the many reasons I love you, Lindsay. Thank you for coming, sharing your wisdom. And this has been super fun. I mean, when you talk about running companies that are growing, successful, still give a shit about their people and make that at the forefront. I didn't even get to some of my questions about transparency, because you run a very transparent organization, which scares the bejesus out of most people to actually put numbers up on the screen and talk about how we're doing as a company. And I know you do that, but it just feeds into, you know, how do we set our people up for success? How do we put our people first? And I think that's the magical thing that you're creating at Wordbank. And so thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love talking to you. A great conversation as always. And I hope, not used to having a conversation like this in front of an audience, so I do hope that it's been interesting.
I think you did great. I think you did great. Listen, next week, I'm actually going to speak. I'm going to speak about this thing that scares the heck out of me, because my ambitions are still not meeting, or my skills don't meet my ambitions. I said that backwards. I said this recently. I think I'm working harder than I ever have in my career. And I am so energized by the work that I'm doing, some of the risks that I'm taking to put myself out there. But, you know, I don't want anyone to show up to their work and hate what they're doing. And I would just share with you, it doesn't have to be that way. And so my mission is to help CEOs and senior leaders create compelling companies that outperform and still make it home for dinner. Because if we get the success, we get the price, but it comes at too great a cost, it's not something that I'm interested in. And so how do we keep that values alignment intact? So that's what we'll be talking about next week. I appreciate all of you for stopping in, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.